The following is a presentation of the Belly Up Sports Media Network.
Here's what's cooking on the day's Sports Stove podcast. We got NBA playoffs. We got a fight in NASCAR and lots going on in Major League Baseball. That's what's cooking on the day's Sports Stove podcast.
From Belly Up Sports and the Belly Up Podcast Network, you're listening to the Sports Stove podcast with your host, Vince Stover.
Hey, good looking, what you got cooking? How's about cooking something up in me?
Welcome into an all-new edition of the Sports Stove podcast presented by Righteous Felon Jerky. Go to righteousfelon.com and use that promo code STOVE15 at checkout, and you're going to get 15% off your purchase. I'm Vince Stover. I'm joined every week by my dad, Dale Stover. Dad, how you doing tonight?
Doing good. We're into summer here, so things are going well. And like I said, a lot of sports going on, a lot of playoffs, and a lot of sports and everything. Even football's back with OTAs, so a little bit to keep up with there. And like I said, playoffs and a lot of college stuff, college baseball, college softball, and a lot of things we can keep up with.
Well, you hit on a lot of things that we just lost some viewers. So we're not going to talk about softball today, sadly. But we do have some things to talk about, probably an abbreviated show actually today. A couple things going on in the sports world we want to discuss, though. And I want to start with NASCAR. And I know I just said we're not talking about softball and we ran people off, but now we're going to run off some more people. But NASCAR had their all-star race this weekend, which no one really cares about. But after the race was done, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. and Kyle Busch got into it. Stenhouse mad about Busch wrecking him out. Busch unapologetic. Next thing you know, Ricky Stenhouse throws a punch, and then people are getting thrown everywhere, trying to get separated. And really what I want to talk about, though, Dan, is Ricky Stenhouse Jr.'s dad, Rick Stenhouse. He steps in, grabs Kyle Busch by the collar, and Kyle Busch decides to throw some punches at Rick Stenhouse Sr., which was a bold move by Kyle Busch. I made a comment on a show that'll drop Friday that, Kyle Busch and Ricky Stenhouse's dad aren't that big of a difference age-wise. So it's not like a 20-year-old punching a 60-year-old, but still it was quite the scene to be had. And let's first get your reaction. I know you've seen the clips and everything of the fight that went on. Anything intriguing to you about this fight as a whole?
No, I mean, NASCAR, you kind of have a history for that, with people getting upset. From there, I watched the first part of the race, so I saw everything happen.
Yeah. And,
to me, Stenhouse was pushing him into the wall or whatever, so you knew there was going to be retaliation on the next lap, and that's kind of what NASCAR does. I guess being an all-star race, you don't want to get knocked out of it on the second lap. I saw a little bit where part of it is the track there at Wilkesboro. Stenhouse was not able necessarily to leave the track.
Right.
So, he had to stay around there anyhow. I did see right after it happened, him go up into where the pit crew was,
right.
And have a little discussion with them. And I can see where he would be upset. But again, waiting into the end of the race. And again, that's something the NASCAR guys do. I don't know that it helps anything. It adds to the luster of NASCAR a little bit. I've heard Dale Jr. talk about that. That was a great thing about short tracks. People would bump and grind, and then there'd be a lot of feelings, and you'd have, a lot of emotion at the end of the race. So, I guess in some ways it wasn't surprising, but apparently it was over the edge because of the fine and everything.
Yeah, if it was heat of the moment, I think that you probably get away with a little bit more, but it's when you sat around the entire race and waited, said you were going to do something, did something, I don't know, but you're right. The way that track works is once you're in the infield, and the race is starting, you cannot get out. Fans, drivers, anybody. So you're stuck there. And to be wrecked out on lap 2 is just wild. And obviously he was mad, and he did something about it. I mean, he did. He stepped up and did something. And I mentioned this again. I was on with Josh King, who hosts the Stage Break podcast. We recorded the episode already. It'll drop on Friday. But I talked about the NASCAR needed this. The race was boring. NASCAR needed this. The fight brings attention, and I think in a good way, to NASCAR. The same way a fight in hockey brings excitement to a hockey game, so does a fight in NASCAR as well. I'm intrigued though, Dad. Rick Stenhouse Jr. Senior steps in and goes after Kyle Busch. And I mean, I don't know. Stenhouse, I think's in his 30s. So his dad is, 50s, 60s, I'm guessing at least. And I don't know, Dad, if I got into a fist fight at any point in my life, would have you stepped in and taken some punches for me?
I'm not so sure I would have, but we will see. Hopefully you wouldn't have done that, but I guess you never know. I was never a big fighter, so I don't know.
I've seen you fight more than I have ever fought in my life. For what it's worth, a little different kind of fighting, but still, I've seen you tackle people. I've seen you do things. So, that's intriguing. Which sport does fighting help outside of a fighting sport like MMA or something like that? Hockey gets in fights. Basketball has had fights. Football has had skirmishes. And NASCAR, of course, has had fights too. Which sport do you think a fight helps promote the sport the best? Again, not counting the fighting sports.
Well, I think, it's very much a part of hockey. So, and of course, they've changed over the years because it used to really dominate things there. But the crowd, like I said, always gets involved. There's still a thing of sticking up for certain players, star players. There's no doubt that fighting is a part of hockey. I think you're right. I think it helps NASCAR. That always creates more excitement. It always creates more buzz. And really, the rest of the season, anytime Kyle Busch and Ricky Stenhouse are involved in a race, everybody's going to remember, what happened here. I think sports realizes from a safety standpoint, the fight has to be controlled to an extent. You can't have a lot of outside people jumping into things. Then you get into your European soccer games where, the crowd and people get killed and, that kind of stuff makes no sense at all. But I think when the participants, because when you get the crowd involved, many times alcohol's involved, and then a lot of things, that's always going to be a bad mixture. When you're talking about racers or players, that's not going to be the issue necessarily with them. Right. From there, I think some sports, have had to be careful. Basketball, I remember back a long time ago, I had some fighting in college basketball, and they really got to be the thing to do, and they had to stop that. That was going to be a problem. Football, again, you got helmets, you've got, people, you're going to break your hand. So you don't want that. But I think it's a part of NASCAR. It's a part of hockey. And, probably those two are probably benefits both of them. Definitely, you don't expect to go to a hockey game, without seeing a fight, and sometimes you do now. You don't see as much as you did, but then sometimes it really gets going. There was a game this year where near the end of the year, the puck dropped and all 10 guys fought. And of course, you got people thrown out because that's against the rules. So you just never know.
Yeah, I think it probably helps NASCAR better than the other sports. I mean, football has the worst fights possible because they're wearing helmets. It's not really a fight. Basketball, we've seen some, but usually it's shoving and jawing. Baseball is usually everybody runs out, but nothing fun happens. And then occasionally you get a good fight in baseball, but not very often. And then hockey, I think it's expected. NASCAR is where it's one-on-one, and then you get to see it kind of linger a little bit for the next couple of races as they get near each other. Now, again, Stenhouse and Busch, are they going to be around each other a lot? Probably not. I think the only thing better for the sport would have been a bigger name involved, especially someone other than Ricky Stenhouse Jr. But nonetheless, it was fun. It gave something for people to talk about. We're coming into the Coca-Cola 600, and it should be a good race. And there's buzz around the sports right now, and something for people outside of the NASCAR world to talk about as well, which I think is always good for a sport when they're getting some publicity that way. We usually have a NASCAR segment on the show. We are not going to do one tonight, as tomorrow night on Belly Up Sports YouTube page, we'll be having the Belly Up Sports NASCAR Mid-Season Super Show. I'll be hosting that and be joined by Chris Prince and Caleb McChesney, who have both been on this show before. And we'll be breaking down the mid-season awards and things going on in NASCAR and talking about the rest of the year as well. So you can tune in tomorrow night, 9 o'clock on Belly Up Sports YouTube page. And then, like I said, Josh King invited me onto his podcast, the Stage Break Podcast. We talked a lot about the fight. We talked about some other things, tires, some other things as well. And, of course, the Coca-Cola 600 coming up in Charlotte. So make sure you tune into that. That'll drop Friday morning wherever you get your podcast, the Stage Break Podcast. All right, Dan, let's talk some baseball now. The baseball season is in full swing. A lot of things happening. There's really coming down to this kind of 2 teams per division in most divisions that we're kind of watching right now. The big exception to that is probably the NL West, where the Dodgers are 8 games up on the Padres. The Dodgers are the only team over 500 in the division. And coming into this year, Dad, the Diamondbacks went to the World Series. The Padres, we thought, got maybe a little better. They looked like they had a good pitching staff. You were optimistic about the Giants. I was not. And we knew the Dodgers were going to be good, but we did not know the Padres and the Diamondbacks were not going to be good. So what's going on in the NL West, and will anybody wake up outside of the Dodgers?
No, I mean, the Dodgers have definitely established themselves early from there, and they've got a lead, and of course we know they've got a lot of good players. So I would think the regular season they're going to continue to dominate as far as winning the division is concerned. At least it looks that way. Whether any of the other teams will improve and be a wild card team, we've still got a couple months to see how that shakes out.
You got a little bit of time. Yeah, right now the Padres are in the wild card spot. The Diamondbacks are 1 game back. The reality is there's just nobody good. Padres, Diamondbacks, Pirates, Giants, Cardinals. I mean, these are just not good teams overall. So there's going to be someone will make their way in. The question is, who will it be, and will they start turning things around? I mean, the Padres have made some moves, some trades. I just saw, I think today, that Bogarts is out. He broke his shoulder or something. So they're missing someone now too. But I still think the Diamondbacks can turn things around, be respectable, get a wild card spot, and even possibly make a run. But Dad, right now in the National League, the Phillies, they're looking really solid. They're 6 games up on the Braves. And for the past couple of years, it's been the Braves division. We expected the Phillies to be good, and they've kind of just had horrible starts to the seasons. The last couple of seasons, they've ended decent. Well, this year they're starting well also. They're 35-14. They have the best division in the best record in all of Major League Baseball right now. But the one thing that I warn people about with this Phillies team, they've only played 3 games against teams that are over 500. So when you look at that and you realize, well, they haven't had to play tough teams yet. Will that change when they start playing tougher teams? I'm not sure. We will see. But hopefully, we'll have some tight races in Major League Baseball. My Milwaukee Brewers are a game and a half up on the Cubs, but the Cubs are going to be good and be right there all year. I think it's a 2-team race in the Central. I think it's a 2-team race in the East with the Phillies and Braves. and the West is a one team, if you can call it a race, there with the Dodgers. In the American League, though, Dad, kind of the same thing. Yankees and Orioles in the East are really the only teams we're going to be talking about. The Red Sox are still above 500. The Rays are at 500. But the reality is we're looking at the Yankees, who look really good, and the Orioles, who we kind of hope are going to be good because we hate the Yankees, but they're young, and their young guys really haven't been super impressive outside of, one or two here or there. Your thoughts on the AL East, and will that be a entertaining race around the
Well, I think it'll stay close with the Yankees and the Orioles. I mean, the Yankees have done well here in the last 10 games, and the Orioles have slipped just a little bit, but the Orioles have a very good team. So I think it definitely should be a battle there. The Red Sox have been, a little bit of a surprise. I don't know if they can catch up. Again, I think maybe they could be a wild card team, which again probably would be a surprise where we talk preseason. But the Yankees and the Orioles, and like I said, the Yankees are playing real well. So both those teams will be a real factor in the playoffs.
In the AL Central, Dad, it's a two-team race there too. Cleveland has been just red hot as of late, but the Royals have been right there with them all along the way. Both teams on a 6-game win streak. Both teams are very good run differential, and the Royals are only a game and a half back from the Guardians. I know you were pretty high on the Guardians coming into this year, at least in the Central. Neither of us were that high on the Royals. We thought they'd be better than they were last year, but I did not see this coming. I don't think you did either, did you?
No, the Royals, like I said, have been a surprise, and I think that's good for baseball because the Royals was one of the really poor teams before, but their young players have played well. They've got some exciting players. They've got some good pitchers. I think it'd be good if they can stay in the hunt. Cleveland does have a very good team. And I'm not quite as down on Minnesota as everybody is. I think they could. Now, they're not playing real well right now, but I think they have the talent maybe to make it a 3-team race before it's done. Everybody thought Detroit was going to be a lot better and be in the hunt, but that doesn't look like that's going to happen. And, of course, the White Sox are one of the worst teams.
Now, to be fair, you said everyone thought about the Tigers. I was down on the Tigers. I was not in on that thought process, but a lot of people were. They thought the Tigers were going to be improved, and are they improved? Maybe, but they're not going to be competitive for the division. And I just really don't trust the Twins at all. I don't know. I've not seen any consistency out of them. Well, they've been consistent where they win one and then lose one, but they haven't been very consistent. Whereas the Royals at home have been phenomenal. On the road, they're average. The Guardians have been great at home and slightly above average on the road as well. And the Guardians have played some tougher opponents too. So I think Cleveland is probably the team that wins that division, but the Royals have some fun. We've talked about this. I think we've talked about it on this show. I know we've talked about it on the Sunday show, but the Royals have a fun roster and entertaining to watch. And the pitching has been much better than we anticipated coming into this year as well. And then one of the biggest surprises has been the American League West. Again, the Rangers were so good last year. We knew they'd take a step back just because of pitching and the injuries that they have. But, I mean, they're sub 500 right now. The Astros have been horrendous, but they're starting to come around. It looks like they've won 7 of their last 10. And I picked the Astros to go to the World Series this year. They have not looked like a World Series team, but Dad, at this point, they're 5.5 back from the Mariners. I mean, Seattle's got a good pitching rotation, but I still think Houston is the team that will eventually emerge in the West. What's your confidence level with these teams in the West?
Well, I think that those 3 teams, it'll be a 3-team race like it was last year. I don't think maybe they're going to have real great records. We'll see where that goes. Seattle, I thought could be better, but then they started out really rough. But like you said, they have a pitching, they do have a good pitching lineup there. Houston, has got the players, so you would think they're going to come around, and it looks like they are playing better. The Rangers were just kind of up and down. A few weeks ago, they were the team that looked like, wow, they're going to dominate that division. But now, so I don't know. I don't think there's any really strong teams there. Like you have said, part of it, it looks like each division's about a 2-team race. And one thing, probably to factor in, like you said, well, some of these teams haven't played a lot of good teams yet. Well, there's not a lot of good teams. I mean, there's 2 in each one, and everybody's going to have, if everybody's got 2 or 3 weak teams in their division, I mean, they do play across the National and American League now. So, yeah, people were going to play the Yankees some and, stuff like that, and the Orioles. But I don't know if that's really as big a factor as long as a team's playing well. And like you always say, if they have good pitching, then they're going to be in good shape. And there are some teams that have some good pitching.
Well, Kevin Wilson, who co-hosts the Sunday Fantasy Baseball show with me, he keeps talking about the pitchers for Seattle. And you've got Gilbert, Castillo, Kirby, and Miller, 4 guys that are all top 2 pitchers on any team in the league, I think, right now. So to have those guys there, that's huge. The bullpen, I think can get better. It's not great right now, but their rotation is very, very good. The Rangers are this team where when, or maybe the better word is if they get healthy, the Rangers should still be really good. And the Astros thing, some of it's health, but most of it is just, man, something's just not right there. And it's turning. Like I said, I think they're starting to come around. To me, Houston is still the scariest team in that division when you look at the veterans that they have with Altuve, Alvarez, Bregman, Tucker. I mean, they've got guys that have been there, done that, won a World Series, everything like that. The pitching staff has to get healthy and has to get, stop cheating. But the pitching staff started off so bad. If they can get things straightened out, I really think that they're the team with the best roster overall in the American League West at the very least. And so, yeah, I'm intrigued by that division, though. It's going to be close, but not pretty. It won't be like, man, you got 3 great teams. It's just you're going to have 3 close teams, and I'm not sure how much we're going to enjoy it when it's all said and done from there. Any other thoughts in the baseball world? By the way, Arizona and the Dodgers are playing a series right now this week, and it'll be a big series for Arizona where they can start pulling things together there. Anything else baseball-wise, Dan?
No, like I said, it's been, interesting. And of course, you guys talk on Sunday about fantasy baseball, and it's been a fun season in fantasy baseball. Lots of players out there, a lot of guys unexpected that have come up, and, a lot of decisions had to been made. How long do you wait on certain guys? And some of them have turned around and started to have a good season. But having these young guys, and like you said, to think at the first of the year you were going to pick up guys off the Royals, that really wasn't the case. And now most of those guys are on teams. So,
yeah, of course, if you listen to our show, I was actually pushing some Royals players this year as well. And so it's another important reason to listen to the Sports Stove Fantasy Baseball Show every Sunday at 8 p.m. All right, let's transition to basketball. The Eastern Conference and Western Conference finals are both underway. Dad, your Boston Celtics squeaked one out in overtime last night. And it's funny. I've seen people saying, well, the Pacers really messed this one up and whatever. And I'm sitting there thinking, wait a second. Everyone I've heard says the Celtics are going to sweep this series. Celtics are going to win in 5, whatever it is. And so to me, I would be more discouraged about the Celtics than I would be about the Pacers losing in overtime in game 1 in Boston. I think this Pacers team is impressive, and I think Boston wins the series. I've got Celtics in 6, but I think the Pacers are this team that can just be a real pain in the side for Boston as you go through. I know that you are a diehard Celtics fan. You followed every single game. You know every single player. What are your thoughts on the Celtics here squeaking it out in game 1 of the Eastern Conference Finals?
Well, the Celtics do look like probably the best team, left in the NBA right now. But the Pacers apparently, again, as you joke a lot, but I don't keep up with the NBA very much. I do keep an eye on the Celtics and see where they're at, but the Pacers I definitely didn't keep up on, and so to think that, and I've heard I listened to some different radio stations, some people up in Wisconsin, and they're very clear that if Giannis would have played, they would have easily won that series, which I don't know, but it looks like the Pacers are have a really good team, and they may push the Celtics here. We will see. I was surprised to see it was an overtime win last night.
Yeah, I was keeping track of the game because when I looked at it, it was tied, and the Pacers they've had decent offense all year. Their defense has not been great. If Giannis played in the first round, would they have beaten the Pacers? Maybe. Definitely more likely than without him, of course. But woulda, shoulda, coulda. You got to be on the floor, and Giannis couldn't be there. So Pacers are fun young team too. I mean, they got some veterans, but generally speaking, a young team, and they've been a lot of fun. Keep track of. On the other side of things, it's the Dallas Mavericks and the Minnesota Timberwolves. They're in game one right now as we speak. I'm here in Kentucky. I'm following the Kentucky players. Karl Anthony Towns has been an underachiever most of his career in the NBA. He's gotten some stats, but never really been able to win. Now he's got Anthony Edwards helping him out, and Anthony Edwards is as fun of a player to watch as anybody in the league. But Dad, I'll tell you what, I watched some of that the Mavericks series and the lead up to this one, and I want to like Luka Doncic, but my soul, the guy whines as much as anybody. It's as bad as watching LeBron, the amount of crying that Luka does during a game. But I think this Mavericks Timberwolves series will be fun, and I'm the kind of guy who likes variety. I don't like seeing the same teams every single year, and so having either the Mavericks or the Timberwolves in the finals is going to be fun, I think, either way. And both of them have some exciting players, of course, as well. Any thoughts on the Western Conference Finals?
No, like I said, I think it's fun to see teams in there that aren't normally in there. And again, I didn't follow a lot during the year, but to me, you sure don't expect the Minnesota Timberwolves to be in there. So, that would be fun. And like I said, Luka, like you said, Luka is really a good player. But Dallas wasn't expected to be here either, I don't believe, at this point. So, like I said, it'll be a different finals for sure with them in it. And if it was them and the Pacers, that would really be something. So we'll see.
Yeah, I don't know if viewership would be great, but there's some stars in those teams. Again, Minnesota with Anthony Edwards, Tyrese Halliburton, and Indiana has become a star. There's some fun young guys included in these teams for sure. All right, Dad, let's do 30 seconds of hockey. Remember, nobody cares, so let's not drag it out too long. Ryan McDonough traded this week to the Lightning. Of course, I'm sure you're devastated by that, or maybe you're not. I have no idea. We haven't talked about it. So give us your quick breakdown on the trade with the Lightning and the Predators, and then your thoughts on the conference finals going on in the NHL.
Yeah, I saw that today, and I read a little bit about it, and I think it was just a fact. Barry Trotz said that McDonough, just had a lot of memories and everything in Tampa. And again, it clears some cap space, and they've got a lot of young defensemen, so that wasn't a bad thing there. I think the NHL playoffs are really going to be good. The Rangers have looked really good. The Panthers are good. I think Panthers are going to be really hard to beat in this. Of course, you got star players over with the Edmonton Oilers. And the Dallas Stars have been good all year in the division. So I think if people enjoy watching hockey, I think these are going to be good hockey games because there's 4 good teams, and you're going to have some really good players. So I know I'll pay some attention to it, and I think the NHL is probably excited that these teams are in it.
All right, very good, very good. So a couple things to remind people about viewership wise going forward. This week, busy week, tomorrow night, 9 p.m. on the Belly Up YouTube channel, the Belly Up Sports NASCAR Midseason Super Show with yours truly, myself, Chris Prince, and Caleb McChesney. So if you're into racing or curious about racing, make sure you tune in tomorrow night. Friday morning, the Stage Break podcast will drop wherever you get your podcasts. And Josh King, the host, was kind enough to invite me on. We had, I think, a really fun conversation. Talked about several different things. And so if you're intrigued or are a NASCAR fan, tune into that podcast on Friday. I will share that once it gets posted on social media at Sports Stove on Twitter and on Instagram. Sunday, we'll be back live at 8 p.m. to talk fantasy baseball. Lots going on. I'm actually facing up against my co-host, Kevin Wilson, this week. And so one of us will be bragging on Sunday about that. And then the local hour is done until the middle of June sometime. So we will not be having any Monday episodes as of right now for the next several weeks. And so anyways, that's going on this week. Dad, anything else that we need to cover that we have not covered today?
Well, no, one bit of sad news this week came out of the NFL. For old NFL fans, this was way before your time, but one of the best centers of all time passed away. Jim Otto played for the Raiders, was known as Mr. Raider. Back when centers didn't get a lot of attention, I think he was known as one of the top 2 or 3 back when I was young, when I was a kid. But you always saw pictures and remembered 00 Jim Otto, and he passed away. So condolences to his family, and big in the history of the Raiders.
Very good. Very good. All right. Well, that's going to be it for tonight. An abbreviated version of the Sports Stove podcast. Check out all the other content coming out of the Sports Stove later this week, Thursday and Friday, and next Sunday and next Wednesday. Make sure you continue to tune in. If you enjoyed the show today, do us a favor. If you're listening or watching on YouTube, give us the thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. If you're listening to us on the audio version, give us that 5-star rating on whatever you're listening on, and tell someone else about the show as well. We would greatly appreciate it. Don't forget about Righteous Felon, the best jerky around, and you can get it at righteousfelon.com with the promo code STOVE15, STOVE15. You're going to save 15% on all your purchases. Thank you for tuning in to today's edition of the Sports Stove podcast. I'm Vince Stover. He's my dad, Dale Stover. Until next time, we'll see you around the Sports Stove.